Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. In this classic bike improvement video, I'm going to be talking about how to cure the cold-bloodedness of your classic bike. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the carburation on the classic bikes. I'm not going to get into the points and the timing and all of that stuff in this video. I love the classic bikes from the late 70s through the 90s. Unfortunately, during that time period, government regulations, especially in the US, really impacted the carburation on the classic bikes, and in order to get better fuel economy and lower emissions, the manufacturers were forced to put very lean stock jets in their carburetors, specifically the pilot jets and the main jets. The symptoms of this for the end users, and that's us, is that the bikes were harder to start, they were cold-blooded, they would spit and sputter for a long time after startup, and on a cold day, some of them wouldn't even get fully up to temperature and run cleanly up through the rev range. This problem affected the bikes from every one of the bike manufacturers, and so it's not uncommon to ride a cold-blooded Honda or a cold-blooded Suzuki or Kawasaki or Yamaha. Not all the models suffer the same or ran as poorly. Today I'm with my 1983 GS 1100E Suzuki, where I noticed the lean jetting on this motorcycle was right around 2,500 RPM in the very low end of the RPM range and low throttle settings. It would sometimes surge just a little bit. When I got into the throttle, it would take about half a second to respond to throttle inputs. So what I did in order to solve that problem this week was to pull the carburetors back off, and I went one size up on my pilot jets and one size up on my main jets. To be specific on the jets, I went up to a 47.5 on the pilot jets, and I went up to a 115 on the main jets. We'll take this bike out on the road in a second to test drive it, but I've already taken it out and it made a world of difference.
I am currently riding my 1983 Suzuki GS 1100E, and I have just put new jets in this bike. I bumped up the pilots to 47.5s and the main jets to 115s, and man, the difference is subtle, but it's definitely there. And whereas before at this throttle setting the bike would be slightly surging, I have none of that now. It seems to run much smoother. I'm letting some heat build up in the engine, and once this bike gets up to temp, I'm going to test the 40 to 80 roll-on time and see if that's improved at all. This was already one of the quickest bikes that I've tested, one of the quickest of my classics. While I was in addressing the carburation, I did quite a few other changes to the bike that have improved it, and I have a upcoming video that is going to be dedicated to those changes and what I've done to refine this bike and just make it 100% to my taste. This thing is just getting better and better as I own it and as I continue to tweak it and make small changes to it. I've recently featured this bike on a review video, and it is just considered to be one of the best classic bikes out there, and I absolutely love riding it. Seat of the pants feel on these changes, it's just made this bike so quick in the low and mid range. And it was already quick. I just think it's going to post a better time in the 40 to 80 roll-on test, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, no need to rev this thing to the moon. It pulls so hard out of the corners.
Because this is such a common problem on bikes of this area, I spent the entire week pulling carburetors off and changing the jet sizes. I've done the same job on my 1980 Honda Hawk 400T, and on that bike it was even more cold-blooded, so I went two sizes up on my pilots on that bike, and I went one size up on my mains. And it is no longer a cold starting bike. It runs very nicely, it gets up to temperature quickly, and it really runs like it should have from the factory. I also went one size up on my pilots and my mains on my 1980 Yamaha XS 1100 Special. And now that bike starts up very quickly and easily. It's no longer cold-blooded. It runs fantastic from idle to redline. Surprisingly, I don't hear of a lot of other people going up on their pilot jets to cure this problem. A lot of people just think that their classics are by nature cold-blooded, and they deal with running issues for the entirety of the time that they own the bike. And this is such an easy to solve problem. It's an inexpensive problem to solve if you can get in and you can do the work yourself and you're competent to pull the carburetors off and switch out some jets. This change does not cure every carburation or running issue that you may have with the bike. There are lots of factors like electrical issues or mechanical issues or block ports in your carburetors that can cause some running misfires. So you want to make sure that the bike is otherwise running fine before going in and attempting to cure the cold-bloodedness by upping the jet sizes. You also want to make sure that your carbs are properly synchronized before going in and doing this job, just to eliminate that as a potential source of the problems that you have in your low RPM running. All right, it's time for a cold start. As you can see, after about a minute of warming up, this bike is ready to rock. It's ready to get out and ride. One of the ways that you can make sure that your classic bike is ready to ride is once it's warmed up, if you blip the throttle, it should pick up revs immediately with no backfiring, with no hesitation, and that lets you know it's ready to go. On a cool day, there's no harm in starting out with a little bit of choke on so that when you get in the throttle, there's no hesitation. You don't want the bike to be hesitating and threatening to stall out as you're pulling out. Once out on the road, however, you should be able to shut your choke off rather quickly, as the bike heats up pretty quickly when you're out on the road and running it. All right, I know this is a little bit of an advanced topic. I'm not suggesting that newbies go in and attempt to do this job to cure all of their running woes on their classic motorcycle. This is something to do once you're sure that every other system on the bike is properly functioning and that it is indeed the lean jetting that's the issue with the running of the bike. As I stated earlier, this problem is common on Hondas, on Suzukis, on Yamahas, on Kawasaki's, and this problem really persisted on the carbureted bikes all the way up through into the early 2000s. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.